Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, living beneficiaries. This is the Estate, the House of Hidalgo show. I am your host, Rick Hidalgo, or also known on Facebook as Eugene Richard of the House of Hidalgo. I am really excited today. It's going to be another great show. I'll introduce my special guest in just a moment. I want to get some business out of the way real quick here. I want to let you know where you can find us. You can find us at blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP. That's like double play. So that's blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP. You can also find us on the web at my official site, and that's www.therockofsalem.org. You can go there and subscribe to our newsletter and find out what shows are coming up and get some wrap-ups of the previous shows that we've had. It's kind of an all-inclusive website. Go there, check it out, see what you think. But without any further ado, I know you guys are used to me having some natural health people on and some we've had some discussion about sovereignty issues and things like that in the past. Tonight is going to be a little bit different, but I'm really excited because this needs to come to the forefront. I got a special guest tonight who's from the essentially what is the nation of Hawaii. He's from the Hawaiian Islands, and he's going to bring some issues to the forefront tonight that maybe you weren't aware of. My special guest, his name is Ken Hunt. Let me bring him on here. Ken, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Aloha.
Aloha. I appreciate you coming on tonight, Ken, to let us know all the happenings in Hawaii and to let us know what it is that has gone on all these years and what it is that the indigenous people of Hawaii are putting up with over there. Maybe we should start, Ken, by just give us the background on this. What is it that caused all the ruffling of the feathers?
Well, of course, history is always written by the victors, and you have to sort through what all those ruffles were. If you study the Hawaiian history, it has been ever since the time that King Kamehameha restored or brought the islands together, there has been controversy, and there has been violence, and there has been settlements. Even as a unified nation, Hawaii was attacked in 1843 by the French, and I think again in 1849, and there has been an attempt by other countries to try and take over Hawaii, but over the years there's also been settlements and agreements. Hawaii itself had several peace treaties with the United States, and what I suspect is that in 1874, when there was an uprising over who was going to succeed the king, and it was quite violent if history books are correct, that's probably when the United States started looking at it from their point of view as saying we need to protect our interests. Now, I'm not necessarily opposed to that, and I'm definitely not the source to sit there and defend the indigenous people, but I do believe no matter how you want to look at this, that Hawaii was taken over intentionally by the United States. It was done by a superfuge. things were set up in place, in my opinion, probably in '74, because if I had a lot of money tied up into land in Hawaii, which according to some sources, back when the time that Hawaii was taken over or overthrown, 90% of all the taxes being paid were from the European interests and from the mostly the white businessmen. And we all know that taxation should not be based on, or voting rights should not be based on how much taxes you pay. Otherwise, there'd be a lot of changes in the state of Florida and elsewhere. But nonetheless, at that time, that could be as good an excuse as any. I have to diffuse to my Hawaiian friends. They are far more equipped to really say their side of the story. And I am a Holly looking at it from what I have learned, trying to study both sides, and coming to the final conclusion that if United States had not been turned into a corporation out of maybe necessity in the Civil War, then the power that was given to corporations that took its footholds in the United States never would have resulted in Hawaii itself being taken over with any help or support of the United States. And that's the best way I'll describe that.
Right. So what is it actually that, I mean, I understand that that there's a feeling that their land was taken over by this behemoth government, but what exactly is it that this group of people are trying to accomplish today?
Well, first place, the term group of people is exactly that. Depending on who you talk to, that group could consist of 300 different groups. And part of the challenge is that I'm having a hard time finding any commonality with the groups, even though I have worked, in my opinion, very hard to see, okay, can we agree on just some basic things? I think all the groups agree on one thing, that the land, with the help of the United States in some way, that the government was taken over, that there was an overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii. Now, why that happened, boy, that gets into all kinds of fun things.
Sure.
But we have not I, but there is an effort by some people like Kahala, who's worked very hard to try and educate the people in the United States of this takeover. And on September 2nd, which is an important day in Hawaiian history, and I think it's the Queen's birthday, but I don't want to be quoted on that. I am not a historian. But nonetheless, on September 2nd, there is a rally being done across the country. And here in Hawaii, the objective is to have the leaders of all these different groups to come together and put forth what they believe is their answer or solution, which to me is something that is badly needed. But you first have to have all the different groups to come together and agree on what they're fighting for. And I do think that the powers to be, the provisional government, she's born, Queen Lili Ukulani, and I probably pronounced it wrong, and I apologize to all my Hawaiian friends. But she was born on September 2nd, and that's one reason we're having that rally, hopefully all over the mainland of the United States as well. But, that's kind of the issue. There's a lot of controversy, and the name of the game is always keep the people divided. Whether it's in the United States or in Hawaii or in whatever part of the world, so that the real power breakers can continue to control things. At least that's in my opinion.
Right, and so why do you think it is, Ken, that, and I partially know the answer to this, so it's kind of a rhetorical question, but why do you think it is, Ken, that none of us here on the mainland have any idea of what's going on there?
Well, I think that that's intentional, too. One is that the de facto wants to make sure people will come here for, paradise and enjoy the hulas and the cookouts and give the impression to the rest of the world that all is peace and love in Hawaii. And I personally believe you won't find any more beautiful, loving, caring people that practice the law anywhere. But nonetheless, there is a real undercurrent to realize that this land was stolen, and in whatever way you want to define it, it was stolen from the Hawaiian people. And, if people found on the mainland, in my opinion, it would be similar to what happened in the so-called civil rights movement. Right or wrong, that movement never would have really got to where it was if it wasn't for the white people getting involved. In this case, what I try to explain is that the Hollies, or however you want to define all those people that are native to or not native to Hawaii, if they don't get involved, the Hawaiian people, in my opinion, just do not have the numbers to bring about the takeover of their property or takeover of their country. So we have to bring it to those people back in the United States so they understand that what the United States has been doing, or the corporate United States with all capital letters has been doing very, very heavily since World War II, if not before, and some would say with the start of the revolution or takeover of Hawaii in 1893, this would be a wake-up as to why we are in Iran and Iraq and Syria and all these other countries under false flag operations. In my opinion, the takeover of Hawaii could have been the United States' first false flag operation.
Wow. No, I totally agree with you. Let me say this for anybody who might be listening. Perhaps you're a native of Hawaii and you want to chime in. The number to call in is 619-639-4605. That's 619-639-4605. You could also come to our page at blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP, and there'll be a flash chat session down at the very bottom, so you can ask your question there as well. Question for you.
Yeah, I want to chime in, too, that I'm hoping that a man by the name of Bronson, who I have the greatest respect for his passion and dedication, I hope he's listening to this, because he's the one that should be on this show, and perhaps he will be in the future. And people like Kahala, who has a lot of dedication, Uncle Sam, who, his story alone is worth listening to. There are some wonderful people in Hawaii that are very passionate, very knowledgeable, and far would be better to share or attempt to share this story with the American people. But nonetheless, I'm doing the best that I can so that maybe those people will step forward.
And I very much appreciate it, and I know that they do as well. I want to ask you this, Ken. You did allude to the fact that there were some efforts around the nation. I'm assuming we're talking about the mainland, where there were some people maybe coming together to celebrate the Queen's birthday. Is there an effort to try to get people in the mainland to join into this struggle? I hate to call it a fight because when you say fight, it just leads to more fighting. But I want is there an effort out there right now, Ken?
I think there's a lot of efforts out there. You've got a woman by the name of Catherine Balknight, and she's the producer of a documentary called The Hawaii, A Voice for Sovereignty. And one can find that on Facebook under her name, and last name is Balknight, Bauknight. And I'm pretty sure that if you just Google or anything and look up Hawaii, A Voice for Sovereignty, you will see that film. She has been going and touring all around the country of the United States, as well as foreign, educating people about what she has uncovered. And if what she has uncovered is actually factual, and I'm not saying it's not, it would definitely change much of the information that is out there from the Blount report and from the Morgan report that goes back at the time of the takeover. Because if I recall what she said on the film, and people said, after the revolution or the overthrow took place, over the next few days, over 20,000 Hawaiians were killed by what I call higher thugs. Now, they weren't necessarily part of the United States, but when you have a corporate United States, it's hard to separate it. It's kind of like looking at the whatever the group is today that we talk about, the Black Hawks or whatever, and what role they have in seeming to be mercenary soldiers in different parts of the world. And especially when I believe that they're also owned by Monsanto now, which is another set of controversies.
Oh, boy. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you, could you bring this home for people? There's probably some guy or some gal over in Alabama or some other place in the United States listening to this program, or maybe they'll listen to an archive of it, and they're trying to just understand this. How bad could it really be to be a territory of the United States, right, or to be a state? They're trying to buy into it, and I think you were just kind of getting into some of that story just a minute ago, in the reports of all these massacres, killing off this genocide that was taking place. Could you go a little bit further into helping people really grasp the enormity of this?
Well, in the Blount report and in the Morgan report, unless I've missed it, there's no mentioning of that. In fact, they make great strides to point out that this was a peaceful takeover, and I'm not so sure about that from what I know. But I think the best way to bring this home is to take it this way. How would anyone like to have United States corporate invade their state and basically make it a police state and take away all their rights? Now, we all see that happening way too fast in the United States now. And by the time that it actually happens, most people just can't believe it because they don't see the gradual movement towards that. I believe in 74, the decision was made basically to sit there and to invade or to secure Hawaii for vested interests. Now, what the Hawaiian people have to understand is that some of those vested interests were actually the royalty itself. The royalty had battles between them. And if you look at the constitutions of Hawaii, you will see that the 64 Constitution limited greatly the voting rights of even those that were Hawaiian by how much land they owned, by their wealth, and so forth. So a lot of these arguments that people raise saying, well, we were trying to do this, the Hawaiian people, just like the American people, are guilty for sitting back and letting it happen, thinking that someone else is going to take care of it, thinking that their one vote, their one action isn't going to make a difference. Now, I know that'll probably get me a lot of attack from some of my Hawaiian friends, but the toughest thing to do is to look at yourself and be honest with yourself about what you did to allow that to happen. So to bring it home, it would be look and see what United States, in whatever form, in 1890s did, and then look at all of the countries that United States has invaded over the years and what the false arguments have been. You can always argue that we want to help the people, that we want to save the people, that we want to give them choice, but the proof of the pudding is the outcome. And usually it's motivated by greed. It's motivated by oil. It's motivated by the ideal of resources that I think I should own. Nothing was different than Hawaii. Gee, now we have the de facto trying to decide the 2,100 acres of land, how it should be used. It's real simple. It should go to the Native Hawaiians first and foremost, and they should decide how to divide it up, not to the de facto government.
How many people are on the islands, Ken?
Say that again.
How many people actually occupy those islands?
Well, the total population, I think, pretty close is 1.6 million. The number that are considered true Hawaiians by how we use blood, what's it called? Blood quantum, and I don't pretend to know what percent. I think it's any type of blood, even 1%. Well, we have to look at what is reported. At the time of the takeover, it appears to be, if the census are correct, that only 40% of those that were living in Hawaii, of roughly the 90,000 people, were considered any blood Hawaiian. What's interesting is that 40% of the population at the takeover was mostly Asian. And some of the decisions that were made by the previous monarchy that brought them over, if the information is correct, was that they'd have no right to vote because they were concerned, like the white Americans, businessmen, they were concerned that the Asians' interests may not be the same as the kingdom and also the businessmen that came from America. Today's numbers, it gets hard because no one seems to have any accurate number. I've heard that those anywhere living in the world that have native Hawaiian blood of at least any amount, 1%, is about 300,000 people. Now, those that live in Hawaii, your guess is as good as mine. No one seems to have any real numbers. I've heard 50,000 people. Which obviously if it's 50,000 or even 100,000, then it doesn't even constitute 16% of the population.
Right.
And that makes things very difficult.
Right, and then from that 16%, let's just go with that figure for a moment here. If you were to gather all these, you mentioned that there's maybe 30 different groups of people who have different ways of thinking.
Maybe 300 different groups.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, okay. It's even worse than I said. It's 300
it's kind of a joke because some of those groups might be one person. You've got people that are advocating the old law that says you could have multiple wives. You've got people advocating that women should not vote. You've got people all over the place. Some of the largest groups are more progressive, and yes, they do believe women should have the right to vote. And I try to work with those larger groups like Lawful Hawaiian Government that maintains that they are an actual government. Won't go into that. You have Hawaii Kingdom, and that's basically headed up by a Dr. Sai, who's a very intelligent man, working with the United Nations to try and get things done with the indigenous. And then you have groups like Hawaii Uprising, and I'm involved in some form with all these groups, or attempt to be. And then you have Ko Hawaii Ne Pai Aina. And I'm mentioning all these groups because I have the greatest respect for all of those groups and most of the people that are in those. But they don't have enough continuity and agreement to become one voice, and that's going to have to be done, in my opinion.
I just think it's odd how here we are, Americans, and right now anyway, Hawaii is obviously acknowledged as a state, and we know far more about the troubles that are happening in the Middle East because of the pinpointing and the Zionism and all that stuff than we actually know about one of our own groups of people, and that's really odd that we would know so much more about what's going on in the Middle East than we do in Hawaii.
Well, I guess you could look at it this way. We know more about Middle East and what happened to the people that occupy Turtle Island, that we like to call Indians, that are not Indians, but the various tribes, most of it has no clue what those tribes are, or what their government system was before whoever claimed that they had the right to come to Turtle Island and invade it, in my opinion, and take control of it, and later become what they call the United States. And that's the tough part, because history is always full of whoever wins writes the history. Now, going back to Hawaii, the simple fact is that yes, people say, well, they became a state in 1959. Well, yes, but here's a couple things that most people don't know. One, the ballots were only in English. Now, at that time, by some calculation, that precluded the 20-some% of the population that did not speak English. Now, if the ballots had been in Hawaiian, that might have made a little difference, or been in addition to that Hawaiian. Also, those that could vote, it was under the Constitution that came from the 1887 Constitution that basically put restrictions that you could not vote if you didn't own 3 acres of land. Well, most of the commoners, the people that were the fishermen and the ones that grew the taro and so forth, what I call just the common folks, they didn't own that kind of land. So they didn't get to vote anyway. So even back in 1959, the vote was basically being decided if you had wealth. And yes, I think it won by something like 70%, but gee, if 26% of the people who were Hawaiian voted, it would not have happened.
Right.
And plus, the argument could be made is that only the people that are losing their land should be the ones that decide they want to give it up. That would have a major impact on how we think that we have a right to take over a country.
Right. So, you mentioned earlier that there's a new issue with Monsanto. I'm guessing that they're buying up tons of property there. Is that what's happening?
Well, Monsanto got its start, and I don't know the complete history of Monsanto, but I'm going to guess that Monsanto got its start in the world in Hawaii first, back in the 70s. And what started that is that there is papayas, and papaya has been a main source of fruit on Hawaii for how long? I don't know the history of that, but it was dying out. Now, whether it was dying out because it was intentionally caused to die out is always the controversy. But lo and behold, Monsanto, that had its foothold at the University of Hawaii, they had and came up with a way to make sure that a strand or a man-made variety of that fruit could survive. And they do have huge holdings here, mostly over in Maui and also over in Molokai, but they are getting a stranglehold, as far as we call it, here on the Big Island as well. They've also, seems like they might have joined forces indirectly with another group, which is for geothermal, which, yes, just like most people would think that geothermal is clean, well, I suggest you live next to a plant, and then you might have a different story. So they've been buying up land left and right as a combination of things that will benefit their financial pocket, to say the least.
Right. And I'm guessing that there's obviously a major uproar in Hawaii concerning that.
Yeah, we've been trying to get GMO removed. I'm all for getting rid of GMO myself as an example, but here's another situation. Most people do not realize that we've had GMO infiltration with food for over 50 years. Okay? Anytime we've taken something that is a natural plant and made it better, it is because of science. Now, whether it's made better or not is a matter of opinion. Health issues have definitely increased in the last 20 to 30 years, and some would say yes because you don't have any nutrients in the food anymore, and you have a lot of other crap that shouldn't be there as well. I'm not an expert in anything, but I try to observe what's happening. And so if you're going to get upset, you need to get up yourself and say, well, gee, in 1949, when most Americans was growing their own food, why in the heck did they decide to trust the food markets? Because that was the program they started to buy into.
Right, right. Yeah, that's really sad. So let me ask you this: you're familiar with a lot of these different groups that are trying to cohabitate there in Hawaii. Would you say that this GMO issue is a binding issue? Are you seeing some unity there?
I think that as far as the actual organizations making a statement like lawful Hawaiian government say that we're against GMO, the answer would be no. I think they should, okay? And I'm planning on doing something. If this gathering in September 2nd does not have the fruit that I'm manifesting that it will, I'm looking what is called a splinter paddle, and I hope I have that right. It's a term that comes back from the first law from King Kamehameha that basically says no matter who you are, if you're stuck in a hole and someone's pissed off at you, they can do major damage to you by busting a paddle over your head. And he learned that the hard way, so he kind of made certain rules that says everyone is treated equally. Well, we need to have a gathering of all groups, and I hope to bring that about by whatever means, if it's monetary incentive, because we need to first come to agreement to know what we agree on and stop beating each other's up. It's kind of like what's happening in the United States. We have all kinds of organizations, but they spend too much time attacking the other organization instead of looking for the good of what we're all trying to do.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, Ken, I'm going to take a little 30-second spot break here. If you want to get a glass of water in, we'll be right back.
All right, sounds good.
Do you remember the series of the 70s and 80s?
Yeah.
You know, the Dukes of Hazzard, I Dream of Jeannie, Mork and Mindy, Hogan's Heroes. The list goes on and on and on. Of course you do. Why? Because they were family-friendly shows. What's the one place you can go on the internet to find them? www.retroshowsarbetter.com. Go by my Ace store and get yourself some popcorn and a movie and meet me there.
You have to.
All
we don't operate in
right.
a vacuum.
Living Beneficiaries, this is Rick Hidalgo, and I am with Ken Hunt today. He is basically representing the people of Hawaii today. Again, if someone from Hawaii that has some representation would like to call, the number is 619-639-4605. We certainly accept the phone call. Otherwise, Ken, I think you're doing a fantastic job. I appreciate what you've done so far.
Well, I want to make sure that, there's a lot of hurt feelings sometimes, and I'm not representing the people of Hawaii. I'm representing my interests and what I see. But I am definitely motivated to work with the people of Hawaii and to build bridges so that Hawaii, in my opinion, will be and gets back its country. It has a right to govern itself. It did not have a right for another country to come in and say we can do it better. And that is part of that corporate mentality that the United States moved into when it became a corporation and not a government of the people for the people. And I think we all know that.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to go back for a moment. You keep stating that Hawaii was taken by conquest, and I understand that. And I have to admit to you that I'm not historically knowledgeable about the Hawaii situation because it wasn't taught in my history book. Okay, they didn't even bother with that. It was more important to talk about Crete or Greece than it was to talk about Hawaii. So you know what I mean. So I want to get a couple things clear in my head. When you say it was taken by conquest, I mean, was there an actual standing army that came into Hawaii?
What happened is that after the 1874 potential takeover of Hawaii, United States and Japan and England kind of kept some soldiers around, mainly to ensure that there would not be a breakout of the people themselves fighting when there was a change of kings. Later on, the king took steps to ensure that there would be a proper succession, but in the early years, there were some problems with two of the kings not really having someone that was waiting to take over when they passed away. So as the story goes, the United States always had some troop here, and those troops were basically there to keep peace. Things got far more controversy after 1887 because there was force, according to many, that created the new Constitution of 1887, and it's called the Bayonet Constitution because many would say that it was basically signed, or the king signed it under threat of harm to him and his family, and it seems to have support for that. So that's when things started getting pretty restless between the Hawaiians and between the kingdom and also the businessmen interests. that finally culminated that when Queen Lily, when Queen Elle, I'll say it that way because I don't want to mispronounce her name, but when Queen Elle took over as the queen, or I should say when Miss Elle took over as the queen, she wanted to restore the Constitution back to more what was 1864, but she also wanted to update it to ensure that women had the right to vote and things like this, if I have this correct. And she wanted to make sure that basically that the royalty stayed in power. Well, obviously, what was gained from the 87 Constitution, the power brokers, the money brokers, did not want to give that up. And
Sure.
She basically tried to do a coup, is how they looked at it. And as a result of that, she was arrested. And yes, American troops that supposedly did nothing besides just be there were involved in the process. What it appears to be is that America itself was not involved except as just presence, but people that were American that had in their mind to take over Hawaii was probably more accurately what took place. And one could argue that the troops were a benefit for the Queen. Other side would argue that it was a benefit for the ones that took over. And this is why trying to look at the historical records that exist to make out what the real truth is pretty challenging, especially when no one's alive that was alive at the time of the takeover.
Right, and then much of those national archives or historical archives are hidden from sight as well, and I've run into that problem myself in some studies
right.
that I've
Well,
tried.
I think some of them are not hidden, but I also think from what I've been reading that depending on what side of the fence you're on, you don't want to recognize the other. Like I read something that blew my mind, and I have to admit that I read it intentionally. I was doing additional research for this talk, but some of the arguments that's been raised is what the Queen said that gave the Hawaiian people the belief that she was of a certain mindset. Well, things that I'm not going to go into, but I encourage everyone who thinks that this is a valid issue, they need to go in and read the records. And the records that I'm talking about is the Morgan Report. And you can go to the Morgan Report, you can just Google it. It's almost a 900-page report. And it's the most thorough report that I've ever seen. And I never heard about it until I started doing this research for this talk.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem. People like to, well, I don't want to use that. It's kind of like the Bible. I don't like that part, so I'll ignore that. And I don't know which part to ignore, so I try to follow the essence of it in my mind anyway.
Oh, no, I totally agree with you. And by the way, I'd never heard of the Morgan Report either. I
heard the Blount Report because that was, according to some people, that was the first thing that a lot of the sovereign people would say the Blount Report was a negative report, but some sources I read says that probably was more favorable for them than the Morgan Report. But the Morgan Report was done by Congress in 1894. And it's pretty thorough. In fact, it's the only one I've seen where I can read the first constitutions of Hawaii in English. Lawful Hawaiian government has the Constitution, and I was a member of that. I won't go into that detail. But whenever I join anything, I do my research, or I attempt to. I like to make sure that what I'm saying has some vestige of truth to it.
Sure. And obviously,
but the Morgan Report, actually has the 1833 Constitution translated into English. Now, who did the translation? Well, that's a whole other can of worms. But the point is that at least it can be read to some degree, and those that understand Hawaiian can do the same. See, what a lot of people in the United States don't understand is that the Hawaiian language was banned. Okay. And of course, there's controversies over that of who did it. Some people say, well, the king wanted to do it because he wanted to make sure that the Hawaiian people were exposed to Christianity. Other people will say, no, that was a con job and a way to take away the Hawaiian heritage. There is so much controversy that goes back to when the missionaries came to Hawaii to try and, quote, save the heathens. Well, in my opinion, I think some of those missionaries need to examine who they need to save, but that's just my opinion.
Right, right. Well, let me ask you this, Ken. You're somewhat familiar with some of the customs to that area. Is there a recognized court for those indigenous people?
No, there's not, and that would be a big help. We have a de facto court, and the de facto course is based on the idea that Hawaii became a state in 1959, and so basically it works against the Native Hawaiians.
Yeah, it puts everybody in that 14th Amendment area.
Yep, exactly. And some of the Hawaiians understand that. You know, they start to understand that by what happened into America, how that obviously tied into those that had interest here in Hawaii. But you know what we have to understand is that it was the good nature of the Hawaiian people that allowed these foreigners to come in. And they thought they would operate in the manner that they operate. Well, unfortunately, certain Anglo-Saxon groups don't operate that way, and they learned the hard way. But on the other hand, Hawaiians need to understand that even their royalty got caught up in greed, if you study the history. Most of the sugar crops were being grown on royal land. And they are the ones, according to what I've researched, they're the ones that wanted to bring in the cheap labor too, and not give the cheap labor any rights to vote. So that's why I've gotten away from this idea that it's always the we and the they. It's the us. It's what we did or did not do, and it's holding and taking responsibility for our actions that affects those outcomes.
Right. I just got a question from somebody on Facebook. I think it's an interesting question, and I'm going to go ahead and pose it to you. And you can just tell me whether you know anything concerning it or not. But do you know whether the indigenous people are trying to reestablish maybe their royal line, and reestablish a seat there in Hawaii?
Well, depending on which group, there are some groups that would like to have an outright monarchy that's not constitutional. It seems to be the majority wants to have some form of a constitutional monarchy. In order to have a constitutional monarchy, you have to agree on who that king or queen is. And because it's supposed to be based on bloodline, you've got a number of people that claim that they are next in line, and that's where the controversy also exists. Like lawful Hawaiian government, as part of their constitution, they say that there has to be a king elected, well, because they don't have a king, in my opinion, that affects somewhat the validity of them being a government. There's some other issues, too, that they're working on. But, if you have rules that you say you're following, once again, you got to follow them. You can't pick and choose them. So, yes, there is a big issue over who is head of the government. Even though it may be more of a figurehead like we have in England, it still is important that there be a monarchy under how most Hawaiians, real native Hawaiians, feel. As far as the American Hawaiians, I doubt that would be an important point.
Well, sure. Now, Ken, how would how should I ask this? How would Hawaiians reestablishing their ancestry and winning their freedom back? How would that affect the big picture, the United States picture, as far as tourism, because obviously that's got to be where they pick the pocket of every Hawaiian, 365 days a year.
Well, I don't think it would be as severe as some people think. My own opinion is that Hawaii obviously has Hawaii has a need for some country to provide them some protection, and our relation to the United States goes deep because we have obviously a lot of Hawaiian Americans. Okay, what I propose, and I'm not alone with this, is that basically we would continue to have some trade-off with the United States. They would continue to occupy some of their bases, and there would be reparations or payments for those bases. Not much different than what the United States does in other foreign countries. With the 719 bases around the world, we could probably come up with a fair and reasonable value for that, and that would definitely help the Hawaiians to, in my mind, get on their feet and stop blaming America for whatever choices they made.
Right. Is that really the sentiment that you get there, Ken? Is there just a lot of blame game going on? I
think that's the sentiment I get everywhere. Everyone blames everyone instead of saying, how did I contribute to this? And that's how I look at it. But, yeah, I think there's a lot of blame game. And I think what the blame needs to be done, though, if you're going to play the blame game, all the groups that are on one side of the fence needs to unite together and at least not be blaming each other. I have met two people that are supposed to be, in their mind, and they have the paper trail to be the king. And both are wonderful, humbling, beautiful people. At least that's how they come off. And their motives don't seem at all to be like Americans' motive that I want to control and I want to be in charge. But things change when you get in charge, and we've seen that happen all over the world. So I don't know. If I had my way, no, I don't think we need a king or queen or anything. But you know what? I am a foreigner. I'm a guest in this land. And if the Hawaiian people that had a constitution that existed before I came here and never was repealed, in my opinion, even if you look at the 1959 Constitution, it all comes from the Hawaiian Constitution of before. And basically it comes from the 1843 Constitution. And so who am I to sit there and tell anyone how they should live? And I definitely don't think the United States should be doing that anywhere in the world, especially in Hawaii.
Right. Right. Well, I want to take this opportunity here. We're at the 12-minute mark. We got about 12 minutes left here. I want to put this out there. If there's somebody who wants to come, who wants to come on this show in the future and discuss these issues from an indigenous level, you're free to come on. I want to have you on, and I want to understand this from all sides because it sounds like a very complicated issue.
Yeah, I think it is, and that's why we need to do more talk. The cultures that are here, it's interesting. The group that got formed in Oahu, it was basically to create their own country. I learned, if it's a true statement, it's in writing, that 40% of the members of the annexation committee were Portuguese. And that blew my mind.
Oh, wow.
Because, and this is why it's important to learn the facts. From the facts, you get a better idea of, how did the crisis get created? Why was it created? And more importantly, who benefits from it? And I intend to bring this point up to people I know because this is a new one to me. 40% were Portuguese. Never thought about that one. I would have thought 40% would have been Asian. I would have thought, but they didn't have any voting rights, see. And so it breaks it down. Of the 5,000 members, it breaks it down. And I think that's in Wikipedia. I think I saw that in Wikipedia. But it's also, I'm sure it's covered in the Morgan Report, because that is 900 pages. And that is the most complete thing I've seen on Hawaii of anything I've looked at. And I've got all the laws of Hawaii going back to the time of the what they call the laws of the nation. But this Morgan Report is pretty phenomenal.
Ken, let me ask you this. I'm guessing that these different groups have noticed the de facto government and let them know what their particular intention is?
We have tried, on a lot of different levels. And that, once again, is part of the problem. If these groups could unite together, I believe that would make the de facto get a little more serious. Just like I plan on running for office, I don't plan to win, but I plan to run on the basis that if elected, I will do everything I can to give the Hawaiian people the right to take back their own country.
Sure.
And to be honest, if that means that I am removed from Hawaii, I just don't really believe anyone has the right to come into your country and take your country over. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but you know what? I think that if the Native Indians, or whatever you want to call America, had the right to decide to dispose of the United States government, I don't think they would have ever agreed to it. So we have to start to understand, just because we have the muskets or we have the guns, that gives us those rights. That's been the Anglo-Saxon mindset since the beginning. My bloodline goes back to Eric the Red. My bloodline goes back to William the Conqueror. I know a little bit about this, I think.
No, I'm totally, I just sit here and my head is just shaking because, how is it that something this significant and this major avoided any media attention whatsoever? I can't get over that.
We were growing taro. One of the groups I'm involved with, called Hawaiian Uprising. We're simply growing taro, which is a native right under even the Constitution. We were growing it in King Kamehameha Park in Hilo. And I knew that before we would have Merry Monarch, which is a big festival, that would be torn down by the state, because that means that people would have shown up and saw that there was dissension. The state's only concern is to give the impression that everything is hokey-dokey. If you can, look up the film by Catherine Bachnight. You might be able to get excerpts of it online. I'm sure you can. But I think you'll be amazed at what you learn from that film. And that is the best documentary that I have seen that is modern, that is of today. But we still have to keep in mind, there is nobody that's alive today that was alive in 1893, that I know of anyway. So everything is still secondhand or hearsay. So then we have to go back and see, well, what is in writing? The Queen herself has a number of diaries. Her diaries are very interesting. They're used both pro and con for what happened. Everybody takes it the way they want to take it, is the bottom line.
Right.
But yes, I hope your audience will take the time to realize that by all means, come to Hawaii, okay? But honor the traditions of Hawaii. Practice aloha. Take it back with you. But realize that these people were definitely taken over indirectly by the United States or directly, depending on how you define that.
Right. And that movie was A Voice for Sovereignty, Hawaii.
Yeah, it's called Hawaii, A Voice for Sovereignty, and it's by Catherine Bachnight. That's right. Baucknight. She has a Facebook presence, and I know that if you go to YouTube, you'll find probably excerpts of her film, and you can look up her name. And Catherine's with a C, not a K. And if anybody has any interest and they can't find something, they can contact me. My email address is krhunt, H-U-N-T, Hawaii, that's Hawaii, at yahoo.com. And for what it matters, it is not Hawaii, it's Hawaii. The W is pronounced with a V. The I is held with a breath. That's why if you see it, you'll see there's a hyphen after the two I's. So it's Hawaii. And I apologize to any of the Hawaiians if I've said it wrong, but that is my understanding of how you actually say Hawaii. It's important if you're going to live here or anywhere, try to learn the language patterns. Try to honor the people of those areas.
Yeah, amen to that. You know, all we here on the mainland know about Hawaii is the pineapples and the, Honolulu and we, the hula skirts and what do we got? Hawaii 5-0. That's
right. Well, that's what I knew before I moved here too. Hawaii 5-0.
Yeah.
By the way, just a couple of things. Dole was the first president of the group that took over the government. Okay, and President Dole, yes, that is Dole pineapple. Okay, right. So those things come together. Hula has all kinds of different messages hidden into it. And those lovely coconut bras, those were brought in by the missionaries. They married the Hawaiian women and liked their naked breasts, but after they had them married, they wanted to get them covered up.
Well, I'm sure there are skeletons in the closet, and we can go on all night about that.
Well, there is, and that's why people, it's fun to learn about real history, because it does change things. But yes, I encourage you to come to Hawaii and learn the heritage, get to know aloha and take it back and practice aloha. And learn what it means about what a holly is, which I don't like the term, but learn, if you get called that, different meanings of that word. Some are not as nice as others.
I've recently been trying to learn some languages through Rosetta Stone, and I didn't see that language offered. So how would you learn that, Ken?
That is the difficulty. It wasn't until I think it was 1974 that Hawaii language was made legal again. And when they tried to have people teach it in the schools, it seems like, from what I've learned and been told, is that the language, like anything else, varies from island to island. It also varies from hill to hill. It's kind of like being in the United States, and people in the South speak a certain way, but people in different parts of the South speak a different way too. Mm-hmm. So it's not that easy to learn true Hawaiian language, and that's probably why you can't find it on the Rosetta Stone. You have to learn it from people. I've had people who said, hey, would you like to learn Hawaiian? And I've attempted to learn it, and then I've learned what I thought I was learning and told someone else it. They said, oh, that's not how you say it. So that's why I know I probably bastardize everything that comes out of my mouth that I think is Hawaiian by someone's perception of it. Yeah, but what doesn't get bastardized is the passion and the belief and the honoring of the Hawaiian people, and recognizing that those that practice aloha are truly Hawaiian in my mind. I'm Hawaiian in spirit, but not in blood. But to me, spirit is very important if you don't live up in the spirit just because you have the blood. And that creates controversies, of course.
Sure. And
I'm Cherokee in America.
Well, I can totally understand because I'm a Cuban American. So, when I go back home, or I should say, I shouldn't say home, but back. I grew up in Miami, Florida.
Right.
Never been to Cuba, but I know that when I speak that dialect of Spanish, some Mexicans can't understand what I'm saying.
That's right. That's right. It's still
yeah.
Spanish, but not their Spanish.
Yeah, exactly. So, Ken, we're down to just under 30 seconds here on the show, and I just wanted to thank you for coming on tonight and bringing this issue to the limelight, because it needs to be there. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to say, whatever you'd like to say in closing.
Well, my last comment is, I know a lot of people say, well, I don't believe in conspiracy theory. And my line is, if you don't believe in conspiracy theory, the simple fact is you just don't know enough. If you have a feeling that something isn't right,
sorry, it wasn't supposed to be that loud. Go ahead.
Oh, I said that my last line was that I believe in conspiracy theory. A lot of people say they don't. My belief is simple. If you don't believe in conspiracy theory, you don't simply know enough. Go with your gut feeling. I hear a lot of people say, something doesn't quite feel right. That is your spirit telling you a truth. Explore it, because usually you will find there's a reason why the Boston situation didn't quite make sense, why the 2001 bomb situation didn't make sense. You know, why those things didn't make sense, because they weren't true. They weren't real. They weren't the story that you were told. And take it all back to Hawaii, which I believe is the first time that United States, in whatever form, exploited and took over a country for their own means, and not for we the people, for the people, by the people. That's all I have.
So there you have it. For Ken Hunt, this is Rick Hidalgo. This has been the House of Hidalgo show on the estate. God bless and good night all.
God bless everyone.